Hello, listeners, and welcome to this, the 21st episode of the Heresy Accountability Buddies podcast. I'm Jacob, and on this episode, I'm joined by
Duncan,
John, and Jamie.
And we're glad to have you with us. We do have a little bit of housekeeping to start with before we get to our episode proper. The first of which is our Toys for Tots charity auction. Jamie, do you wanna take this and run with it, since you've been gracious enough to host this process several times?
Sure. So, for the new listeners that don't know about it, I've for a long time have been associated with we call it the Toys for Tots auction, and basically what we do is we'll go and create an army or several armies, and have listeners and hosts donate items and models, and we'll build and paint them, and then we make a unified army, and then we put it up for auction, with all the proceeds from the auction going to the Marine Corps Reserve's Toys for Tots charity. Had been doing it with the RFI podcast previously, with 40K Radio before that, and a couple other ones. But so we have a Death Guard army that's because it's very thematic, but it's a pretty decent sized Death Guard army that's around, you probably can easily get it over 3,000, but it includes three Mark 2C or Mark 2B Land Raiders, 3 quad mortars, Grave Wardens, tactical, I think three tactical 10-man tactical squads, a heavy support las cannon team, and then it also has Morty and Typhus with it, both the Primarch and Typhus. The whole army was basically painted by Brian Byers, with a little help from another painter, Tiger, but it is very, very high beyond tabletop standard army. It's an absolutely beautiful. But anyway, so this army we've kind of had in the bag for a while. We finally have gotten a chance to get it all finished up, and actually have it sitting in a box ready to go, packed up, and it's all photographed. So come Thanksgiving week, we're going to put the auction live on, I think we decided it was going to go on eBay, and all the proceeds from the to me it means a lot, because it's a lot of times it brings a lot of the community together, but also for me, when I work on them, it gives me a good chance to really test my skills, and I know a couple of the other guys do, they really try to go all out. So if you can, listeners, spread the word out that is going to be going up week of Thanksgiving, and I'll try and make sure the auction ends either Friday night or on Saturday, so that people that not get a Thanksgiving in the U.S., that they would have a chance.
Will we be posting pictures of this army anywhere before to build up hype or anything about that?
So
Say in our Facebook group or other places.
We already have pictures of the army up on our Facebook. I don't think people realize that's what it was, but I did post very detailed photos of the entire army, very well photographed. If people have any questions, please just let us know on the Facebook page or email, and I'll be happy to answer. And we're also taking feedback to do another army. So we haven't decided what it is going to be yet. There was discussion between maybe Sons of Horus. I really don't want to do it because the army before this one was Imperial Fist, and I really hate painting yellow. Just not emotionally up on doing that again this soon. But the other one, another army that we were talking about, was possibly.
By other people, you mean Jacob?
Jacob, me.
You say that they consistently polled as one of the highest played armies last edition.
This, and even this edition, they're polling high, as are the Dark Angels. I'm currently for myself am building a Dark Angels army, but I've already got stuff set away for my next. Is going to be any feedback y'all can give us. It would be most let other people know that the auction will be going live, because I know there's really love these.
I am really looking forward to that auction, because I've not really been involved in a lot of the charity work in the heresy community in the several years before, but I'm looking forward to seeing how this one goes, and I'm looking forward to actually working on whatever we do next year. And I will happily donate stuff and probably time to doing some stuff for it myself.
So I will say, just because of the way we did this army this year, because one person that's very skilled at painted it, it's an absolute. It's very unified, very, very well painted. And Tiger helped out. Tiger actually did most of Typhus So he kind of did the Primarchs where Brian did like the grunt, all the rest.
Nice. And where can we find the people who did the actual painting at? Do they have Instagram or Facebook profiles or anything like that?
I'm Brian and Tiger both have. I know they're on Facebook, and I will look and see if I can find their Instagram stuff because I'm pretty sure Brian has stuff on Instagram. He doesn't usually paint a lot for other. He paints a lot for himself, mainly just for. But he's.
Oof, I dig it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll post those up on our Facebook page, like more information.
We'll look forward to it, and again, just to make sure that it's said, thank you so much for taking point on this, Jamie. It means a lot.
Oh, I really love doing it. It gets me kind of back in the hobby. When I kind of get burnt out, I'm like,
I dig it, brother. I mean, you're good people. You doing something like this and being involved in this for so many years now, and then allowing the group of us who are here to kind of continue the tradition from RFI and 40K radio. It's really been kind of nice.
Yeah, and I'm thankful for you all too, because I know in the past several of the other hosts have helped out with the armies. In fact, I think on this army, actually, the Land Raiders are actually all done, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Yeah, so just some other final housekeeping notes. This episode, we will be going over the Michigan GT. We do have a special guest, Lemmy, joining us for that segment. I do believe Jack was also going to be able to tune in for that. And we will look to resuming Legion-specific content kind of as our schedule allows. Not just our schedule, but obviously the release schedule and other such items as they come through. Obviously, we still want to make sure that we make time to be able to talk shop, talk hobby, as well as to be able to talk about events, missions, how to make missions, how to run better events. So we'll keep you appraised as we continue to look forward at those timelines. Just to make sure, Dan, we're glad to have you with us. Did anybody else have any more notes or housekeeping? Oh, I've got one for sure. The 12th, November the 12th, we are doing 3 rounds of 3,000 point heresy at the Battle Barn. I will be hosting that event, and we are looking to kind of set the stage for what is going to be the Indy GT, or the Circle City GT. So this event, again, 3 rounds, 3,000 points, November 12th. Circle City GT is February 10th through 12th, and that's looking to be a 3-round Saturday, 2-round Sunday, 3,000 points flat. We got a lot of feedback from not only our local play group, but from some of those who we expect or who we hope might be able to both make it up from down south as well as down from up north. And we feel strongly that for the interests of those assembled, a consistent points value all day is something that we'd like to provide. And currently, I believe, are squaring up for list check, though that's currently, again, being talked about with those most likely to be in attendance, and that policy may ultimately change or pivot to a bring as many lists as you like format. I do know that the event description page, to my knowledge, that's been posted with Circle City GT, that does currently have us listed for list checks, but again, that can be subject to change. With all of that said, I think it's time to segue into hobby progress. What's everybody been up to?
Yeah, so this is John. I've recently been trying to figure out kind of what I want to do with the desert tables. I know I've talked a lot about wanting to build a big plateau and wanting to build a lot of the Necromunda buildings and a bunch of other kind of stuff that's coming together. In the past, I'd picked up a couple of the kill team. I think it's Octaris had the orc terrain in there. I picked up 4 sets of that as part of an eBay auction a long time ago. And I kind of figured that would be a quick and easy way to get myself motivated to working on the rest of the terrain. Going back through a lot of my Instagram photos when I was working on terrain when we started the podcast, it's a lot easier to keep going on a project when you've got some type of check mark you can do, and it's just been kind of building stuff, putting it in boxes, and moving forward with a lot of it. And if you're working on an army, you don't want to do all of it at once. You kind of want to break it off into to bite-sized chunks, so to speak. So this weekend I was able to get everything for the I got 2 of the Octara sets built. The other 2 I'm going to save for some of my Necromunda and ZM boards. I got everything built, and then I got it all taped down and got it all base coated with a silver spray paint that I like to use for all of my starter sets for where I'm going with the Necromunda stuff. I've done in Instagram. I made a kind of tutorial on how to do the Mechanicum walkways that they had for all the old Necromunda Mechanicus sets. Spray it silver, and then I started sponging on different colors to allow for kind of a build-up of grime and things like that. But these I'm going to just, I sprayed them silver, and then I watched, I want to say 20 or 30 different how to paint videos on YouTube. And I think the easiest way is going to be contrast paints. Let that sit on the silver. It'll allow it to have kind of that metallic undertone, so it'll still look kind of like beaten up metal, and then seal it and go through with the oil wash like I usually do on most of my terrain. So that'll be the next steps on those. And so this will give me a good kickstart into getting into the desert terrain. I also built a fairly large order of bark. A lot of people use this like inside of reptile terrain, or inside of reptile terrariums and different kind of critter. I don't know what you would call that. I guess
enclosures.
There you go. Thank you. Enclosures. I know a lot of y'all do this stuff, and I don't. I was just buying it for terrain because it's a lot lighter than going through and casting plaster or resin rocks and then gluing them together and doing all that. Where if you paint it up, it looks a lot like organic rock and things like that, where you get that same effect. Luke's APS Hobbies on YouTube did a really big video on gluing the rocks together and then going through with Expandifoam and then coming back through with spackle and filling it out so you can get a really nice looking rocky terrain feature without having it weigh 10 or 15 pounds. It ends up weighing maybe a pound, if that. So it's a really good way to build up a table of size without having it weigh a lot more than you normally would see from plastic and resin terrain. So the other important part of building all these tables together is making sure that with my back and issues like that I can still transport them to the destinations that I need to. So I got a lot of that in. I also placed a big order for a 50-pound bag of play sand so that I can base all this stuff as we go forward. And I've got some other different grains of sand and little rocks and things like that I can vary out the different areas. So you'll have larger rocks closer to the big rock formations, and then as it kind of goes out, it'll obviously progress further into finer sand. So I want to make sure that this is not just a uniform look. It's obviously going to have different pieces and parts as I go forward, and using some of the other basing material that I used for a lot of the bikes and for a lot of the other terrain that I built. So trying to make sure this all looks as realistic as possible. I also got all of the Frontieris landing pads filled in, and then I found this Reaper Miniatures did a Kickstarter a while ago for what they called the Bones Miniatures number 5, and one of them came with this really cool Tibetan-looking monk habitat, but it's a giant monkey god, and I figured that would be really cool, built into the side of a plateau in the middle of a desert, some long-forgotten civilization. So right now in my room, it's kind of all taken over by planning for this, as well as doing some reorganization in the house. My wife has been taking apart my garage. Our fridge failed this week, so we had to buy a new freezer, and in doing that, we had to reorganize everything, which allowed me to get further into my craziness of getting all this stuff ordered. So a lot of organization, a little bit of spray paint inhalation, and a lot of more work.
The sounds of a very busy man.
Smidge, just a smidge. I'll pass it on to Dan, recently arrived.
Good evening, everybody. How's it going? So my hobby, I did a little bit more on Blood Angels, filling in details on the Blood Angels. But the biggest news on my hobby is I have completely pivoted on priorities. And I have decided that since I figured out my word bearers and my Ultramarines are probably playable as is at Adepticon, and I'm going to be running events 2 of the 3 days, instead of trying to push to get my army ready, I am going to, and this is inspired by Zach, who hasn't been around for a while, but is on the podcast. He popped in and said, I've decided I'm doing a Golden Demon entry this year. And so I have decided that I am also doing a Golden Demon entry this year. So in my various orders for things, when I first read the book Betrayer, and Lork is introduced and woken up. And if you don't know it, slightly spoilers, but it's a 8-year-old book or something like that, 9, 10, something. Lork was the Legion Master of the Warhounds, who became the World Eaters when Angron was found, and was killed in a battle, interned in a dreadnought, is the first World Eater dreadnought, and is pretty ancient and old as a dreadnought. When they wake him up, they don't wake him up very often, and he gets woken up to fight the Ultramarines on the ship in the battle. Was it above Numenor or was it before that? I don't remember. Duncan, you might remember a little better. It might have been before that.
You mean when the Conqueror was being boarded at, I think that was Armatura.
Or Armatura. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking nowhere. But anyway, as soon as I read that and they started talking about Lork and the Warhound Dreadnought and everything, I've wanted to paint up a model of Lork. And I just thought it was a cool story, cool idea. And so I picked up a Relic Dreadnought. Well, again, spoilers, at the end of it, he fights Lorgar. And basically, Lorgar is fighting off the Communion of Psychers from the World Eaters, and he's trying to do rituals to transcend Angron into a Demon Prince. And at the same time, Lork kind of realizes what he's doing and decides to go after and fight Angron. And so I also, when I picked up my Word Bearers, picked up an Angron model, because you have a Primarch, but I never planned on really playing it with the army. So my Golden Demon entry, I am going to do a dual entry. So it's going to be that fight, and it's going to be Lork versus Lorgar. I'm going to call it Saving Angron, because both of them in their own way think that they are doing the best thing to save Angron. The moral implications of what each of them are doing is a little iffy, but in their own minds, they each think they're trying to save Angron. And so I've got all the bits and went out and bought Give Force 9 Urban Rebel basing kit to base it up. I'm going to have bits of dead Space Marines from Word Bearers, World Eaters, and Ultramarines on board. But Lork will be painted up in the Warhounds colors with the pale blue and white. Lorgar will be Lorgar, and they're going to be fighting each other. And so I've been starting to trim up and pose pieces. I realized I need to take a heat gun to Angron to Lorgar, because he's in a pretty static pose in the Lorgar model, and I want him to look like he's basically deflecting a blow with the mace.
If you're using the Forge World one, that's a pretty early on Primarch, if I remember correctly. So it's a pretty static kit.
Yeah, so I gotta bend the knees and bend one of the legs up and make it, and I'm gonna have to repose both the arms and do some work on the model. I think I'm gonna use the base part that Lorgar stands on that would go out separate with his base, that has ruins on it, because I figure he is trying to invoke a ritual of sorts, and so having some ruins in the ground around him as part of that ritual would look cool, and that'll fit right into the base. And so anyway, that's kind of been my hobby, is kind of doing a lot of planning, bit gathering, and starting to do some research into a lot of how's Lork going to look, what's the right way that Lorgar is going to look at that point, and how to paint him up. Starting to look at some Golden Demon dual models, and looking at what people are doing with those. And I have no pretenses that I'm going to go in and win a Golden or anything like that. Right? This is I'm going to have a really cool display piece when I'm done that I painted, and I happen I'm going to do it with the goal of putting it in Golden Demon, but it's a model that I think will just look really, really cool sitting on the shelf when I'm done with it. But that's been my hobby, and I'm really excited about it. And not that my Blood Angels are still there, and I still want to do them, and but we talked about last episode about being really excited about something means you're going to have a lot more fun painting it and enjoy it and everything. And so this has really got my creative juices flowing to, as something that it's going to be one piece, but I mean, this one piece will be as much as some people put into armies, right? By the time I'm said and done and get it all painted up. So, that's what I've been working on and, will be working on for the foreseeable future, which is good and bad because I'll have a lot of fun, but like with display pieces, I'm probably going to follow the norm and not post publicly like progress pictures of as I'm painting it because, a lot of display competitions don't want you to do that. People don't try and display pieces ahead of time. So I'll probably just share it in a couple of closed groups with people I know, but, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited. So
I'm really happy to hear you doing that, Dan. The only thing about that makes me sad is that you're not doing Bill the Pony and Sam.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think Heresy's my thing. I did my last Golden Demon display piece was the Eisenhorn model, and I am really proud of that piece. But the more I thought about it and what I wanted to do, and I have an old cultist that I thought about painting up. That's an old lead cultist that is really crisp and would be a cool model. But the more I thought about it, and I'd wanted to do the Lork model. Like I said, as soon as I read that, I'm like, I'm eventually going to paint up a Lork for a display piece, right? And wouldn't play him. It's going to be a display piece. And then as I realized that I wanted to do this, I want to do a Heresy piece. I want to do. I think there's a number of scenes. Like I'd love to do a big diorama of the scene on with the Custodes and the Word Bears and when they're summoning the big demon there, and they end up sacrificing the Custodes to summon the demon.
Ingthal.
Yeah. There's a few bits that I just would make cool models, and this is one of them. And the having the models already and being able to draw from that, and kind of, I think it probably means that it was meant to happen because I bought both the bits and neither of them were assigned to armies or planned to use for armies and ready to go. So it just makes a lot of sense. So with that, I think we'll move on to Duncan since you were talking anyway. So what you got going on, Duncan? I can see you painting away.
Yeah, I'm sitting here working on more chieftains because I think last week it kind of got missed a little bit. Where I talked about I have some of my chieftains ready. I don't have all of them ready. I'm working on the next batch of 5, and my phone keeps going off because, of course, it does. Hold on a second while I mute that because I don't want that to constantly be annoying or loud. Anyway, so as I was saying, working on chieftains, currently putting the steels down on these guys. I'm putting a lot of effort into these guys because since they're supposed to each individually be a character and they're supposed to be more than just a grunt line troop, I'm kind of giving them a little bit extra effort, as it were. Beyond that, I have not really done anything. I have worked on lists, preparing lists, trying to figure out what I want to do when I start working on my new world or my new version of the World Eaters, and trying to figure out where I want to expand the Sons of Horus into, since I kinda don't want to do something for Golden Demon, because Lord knows I'm not going to win it, and I don't really feel inspired to do anything like you yourself have done. But I think the next thing for the Sons of Horus I'm going to try to work on is likely going to be Abby versus Loken, so we'll see how that goes. I have the model from Forge World, and I've had it for years and just kind of sitting there in a box, never get anything done with it, so we'll see how it goes.
Are you going to do that as a playable piece? So you'll be just use the display base with magnets or something where you can pull Abaddon out and play him in an army still?
Yeah, so I can pull Abby or Loken, because while I don't personally play Loyalists, I mean, it's nice to have the guy.
Oh, sure. No, I definitely would do that way.
Although I'll almost certainly change his chainsword for something different. And I've got a couple bits and pieces laying around that I can swap that for. So
really, I can't imagine a Heresy player having a bunch of bits lying around.
Yeah, no joke, man. It's next to impossible for us to ever have anything spare, like piles and piles of torsos.
That's like I want to switch Lorgar's head to Vulcan's, and I threw out in the chat. I'm like, anyone got a spare Vulcan head running around? And of course, someone popped up. Yeah, I think I do.
Not even gonna pretend I'm surprised by that. Beyond that, most of my hobby stuff lately has been working because I've been the only supervisor there for stuff who's been there, and we've had people on vacation. So it's been kind of a hectic week for me, but it's okay. Somehow in the middle of all this, I found the time to go and buy my wife a new car. So we also did that.
Sorry that had to happen, but it sounded like you got it. You did pretty well on the deal.
Yeah, I mean, she had a 15-year-old Ford Escape that had mechanical issues that were popping up more and more. And we had just this past week spent a little bit over $1,000 fixing a mechanical issue that we thought was going to fix the majority of all the problems. Turns out it didn't fix any of them. And stuff, in fact, somehow became worse after that fix. So I got to the point where it's got 134,000 miles on it. I can sit there and throw more money at it, try to fix it, chase, see what the problem is, and then still have a 15-year-old vehicle with 134,000 miles on it. Or I can just say the heck with it, go out, get her a newer Ford Escape since that's what she wants, since this is a Ford family we have. And that's what we did. So we went and got her a used 2019 with less than 20,000 miles, and I ended up walking out with it for 17,000. So I'm not upset about it. But it has kind of been dealing with everything else. It's kind of eaten any hobby time I've had. So I guess I'll throw it over to Jamie. What have you done this week?
So kind of like everybody else except for John, I have had a lot of going on this week, especially with work. I also had kids' birthdays going on in between at the end of one that we had today, and then the twins are next one. So plus the house remodel, so I can make a lot of excuses. But I actually did do hobbies.
So what'd you do?
I started working. Actually, the last show. Well, I don't know if it made it through, but I built the Kratos and a Mark 1C Rhino, and so I actually started painting those this wind along because like I have like literally a very very large box of tanks at this point that are built in prime that are in some stage of paint for my army. Which by the way is if y'all haven't heard, it's Dark Angels. So it's Dark Angel. A lot of it's going to end up being Iron Wing, but some of it's going to be Dreadwing. So this week, though, the big thing that I actually did hobby-wise is I snuck out today on the way to a birthday party, popped into the GW store, my local GW store, because my manager called me and said, hey, I've got a leftover Land Raider Proteus. Do you like it? I was like, so I went over there and grabbed the Land Raider Proteus, and I started working on it this afternoon. And after opening up the box and having a good look at it, and started thinking to myself, this is really familiar for some reason. So I went and got my Age of Darkness starter box set, got the instructions out, started looking at it, and then I realized that the Land Raider Proteus and the Spartan, the new plastic Spartan, literally are basically the same kit. Like the sprues are exactly the same for 80% of the between both of them. So the Land Raider Proteus has one less sprue than the Spartan, and then one of the sprues that has the kind of like the walls, like the side walls, different, but it's basically the same sprue. In that section, it's about an inch and a half short, and the instructions literally are exactly the same for both kits. And I was like, yeah, this is more than vaguely familiar because it literally is exactly the same thing. Actually, it's a good kit, and like most of all the new GW kits, it's very detailed and overly complicated for the sake of being overly complicated. There's a lot of stuff on it that did not think needed to be separate parts, but they were. So it's not your old Land Raider kit of your either the Godhammer pattern or the Mark 2C from Forge World. It's actually a pretty different build than any of the previous Land Raider kits were. Again, it's like basically it's the new build Spartan. It's got all the options for all the weapons included, very nice, including the hull mounted twin link or double las. Yeah, I mean, I'm not finished building it yet because I got it kind of late this afternoon, but it's taken a little bit of time together. But it's a good build then. Very, very well put together. well thought out. Just it's a lot of steps. Like the whole pieces are not one big piece; they're broken up into multiple smaller pieces. So that's my hobby. I'm sticking to it.
So between the Land Raider and the Spartan, which one do you feel so far is actually easier to put together, or do you feel they're both almost exactly the same?
It's literally almost exactly the same. I mean, like,
So a giant pain because there's too much stuff that doesn't need to be there.
it's so like again, like I've built the Kratos, I've built the new Demos, and I've built the Spartan, and I've built now the Proteus. So I think other than I haven't done the new Predator yet, but that's going to be basically the same as the Demos. And then I haven't built the new Sarkarian because I have way too many of them already, and I don't really need another one.
There's no such thing as too many Sakarans.
Well, I have like 6 of them right now that I don't really. I think I'd only ever play 2. But I'm interested in getting one of the Sarkarians to see how it builds out. But I just don't need one right now. But so far, the general trend with all these kits is they're major steps up injection molding wise. They're a lot cleaner. They're a lot they're better thought out, like how to put them together. The instructions are vastly superior and a lot more detailed. There's a lot more options for them to change it to other kits or different weapon variants. And the cool thing is that they all have included all the weapons variants that they've had it for sponsons and other additional weapons, which like in the past you were having to buy like extra kits or add-on kits for all that stuff. So that's really cool. And I know like some of my older tanks, I have some older Venerators that I've built, Sarkarian Venerators, that don't have sponsons on the side. I capped over them because I just didn't use them back in 1.0. And so what I did is I bought a couple of the new sprues that have all the sponson weapons on them, and I'm going to retrofit the new sponson weapons onto the old tank. It's going to take a little bit of work, but I think I figured a way to do it.
One of the things I noticed with the Kratos that I was really impressed with is that they put a lot of thought to where parts are attached to sprues.
Yes.
So that you don't have very many hard to clean sprue connection cutoffs. They seem to hide in seams or hidden spots or anything. So if you do a pretty good job of cleaning up the sprues when you cut them, it's all hidden away anyway, and in seams or hidden spots. So they did the same with the rest of the tanks like that. That's a good thing.
There's only so on the Spartan and the Proteus so far, okay, in the builds. From what I've seen, there's only like one spot that's kind of bad on like where like the main like the kind of like where the drive shaft goes into like a drive wheel where it's like a larger part that sticks out, kind of like a hump where all the treads go around. There's one spot that's like in a really, really bad angle where they've got an injection point coming in off the sprue. But other than that, like all the hull and the back and the sides, and they've been really good. And the same thing with the Kratos and the Mark 1. Like I haven't really had. They're very complicated kits. It's not a quick. Like I could crank out rhinos and old Land Raiders like very, very fast in the past, and these are a lot more detailed enough that it's a timely build, but it's not hard. It's just there's a lot of parts you're having to deal with.
But it's also not resin, and therefore hopefully not going to shatter the first time something falls on it or it falls off a table.
True. Or if they have like a hybrid kit that's resin with one of the, I haven't seen one yet, but there definitely could be one coming. Let's put it that way.
So no more Land Raider in a tube sock, huh?
Yeah.
I dropped my Fire Raptor one.
That's all it took?
Well, like, yeah. Just, I know with my Thunderhawk, I've had to pin it multiple times and use like not just glue but like epoxy to try and keep on just from transport like break is how it's been. Good kit. Little surprised at how I thought it was going to be a little bit more expensive than it when they first announced it. I was figuring it was probably going to be about $100, but it was the same price as the old Land Raider, which is $85. Still is a lot of money, but when I got in the hobby, Land Raiders were only like $45 or $50. So, and it's basically been the same kit until like now.
It still amazes me that the Chaos Land Raider and the regular Land Raider are the same $85.
Yep.
And the Chaos is exactly the same model with the extra sprue of all the spiky bits
Spiky
and
bits.
funky stuff. And
Yep.
it's like, if you're going to buy one, why don't you ever always buy it? Because you can never have too many spiky bits for
Well,
other
it's the
things.
same. It's the same thing with the old Rhino and the Razorback.
Yep.
They're the same price. It's the same kit, except it comes with the extra Razorback sprue, which has just like random other bits on it with the turret. So why wouldn't you buy the Razorback and then sell the extra sprue?
What's a plastic Razorback sprue? You mean it's not a big metal chunk that comes separate?
No, it's a plastic sprue that it's basically the front turret the whole turret off the old Land Raider with the heavy bolters. It's that with las cannon.
Am I dating myself that the only Razorbacks I have are metal?
No, I have metal. I have a metal one too. But yeah, I mean, like, so yeah, I mean, like, if you're little tip, if you're buying old Rhinos, buy the Razorback kit and then sell the Razorback sprue.
Or do like most of us do. Don't sell it. Just store it in a small bin of other bits that you'll never end up using.
Exactly.
I've used many of those Razorback turrets, especially with my Land Raider conversions. I've got a lot of them.
Yeah.
If nothing else, eventually you build a knight and throw a broken down Razorback, halt turret on a knight base or something, right?
Yeah. I mean, so
I mean, you can do all kinds of stuff. I'm sure that the predominant theme that most 40K players even and 30K players all have is too many bits just laying around, not being used.
yeah, I have to sometimes explain to my wife. She's like, "What are you doing downstairs?" I'm like, "Organizing bits." She's like, "Why are you doing that?" I was like, "Well, so I can actually find stuff when I need it." So like, I literally have plastic tackle boxes, like probably John does, that have like just bits for like Mark III, then just bits for Mark IV, and then just bits for Rhinos.
I went over the top, and I've got everything organized, drawers that are labeled. And I've recently gone through and kind of redone a lot of the drawers. I had like the Mark III drawer and the Mark IV drawer, and I found out that I was just wasting a lot of space because I was throwing in kind of everything that sub-assembled into certain other drawers. So I just went back through and combined it all. Now it's just torsos in one drawer, fronts of torsos in one drawer, backs of torsos in another drawer, and then completed torsos in another drawer. So it's a lot easier to build stuff now instead of just going through and finding mini assemblies. So yeah, I've gone through many different organizational spurts and trying to get everything together.
Well, I mean, like, I don't have as much stuff as you do, but I know, like, just from having done as many Toys for Tots ones as I have, there's always tons of just leftover parts. So, like, people will be like, "Hey, I'm looking for, like, random multi-meltas or something like that." I'm like, "How many do you?" Because, like, I've got so many of them that I'm never going to use.
Yeah, Martin Emery was posted online. He was like, "I need purity seals and word bearer decals." And I said, "Well, you will never need them again, my friend."
Yep.
And I sent him a huge bag of all the purity seals that I'd had because, you're not using them in Heresy. And then decals. I mean, I bought so many Calf decals because I like the little knee pad 13s and the tiny little Ultramarine U's that came on there. So I had so many. I think I sent him a quarter of an inch thick of word bearer decals.
Know anybody who needs regular Mark II, Mark III heads and or torsos? Because I'm pretty sure I have multiple pounds of those sitting in drawers right now.
Yeah, I've got tons of Mark III.
Yeah.
I went through and I was pulling some different stuff out, and I'm amazed at how many like Ultramarine specific bits I have extra lying around that are unassigned to any units I have right now. Same thing. Way too many bits, way too many different places for them. I was trying to find certain models in the same place, and I had to go through 4 boxes to find my when I built my librarian for the Blood Angels a few weeks ago. It was all over the place.
Jacob, we're kind of at that point, sir. What have you done lately?
We sure are. So my hobby progress this week saw me finish assembling the shipping crates that I got as prize support at the GT, as well as finish priming all of my Battletech haul that I picked up at Gen Con this year. So hopefully, at some point, once the airbrush gets done with Thousand Suns project, I can start getting base coats on things and move those armies forward.
Not to derail the podcast, but did they have any of the new box sets that were coming out?
The Alpha Strike box set, yes, they did, and I picked one up, and I was extremely happy with it. Now, admittedly, like, I knew what I was getting, but in terms of giving you a relatively playable two-player experience that all you really need is a table to play on out of the box, extremely successful. So, in terms of Heresy, one of BattleTech's biggest conflicts is very much Faction A and Faction B. Now, there's obviously sub-factions within those, but the Alpha Strike starter gives you 5 clan mechs and 8 Inner Sphere mechs, so that's 1 star of clan mechs and 2 lances worth of Inner Sphere mechs. Probably about a dozen cardboard trees that just kind of slot together, and half a dozen, if not a dozen, cardboard buildings, likewise, just to get you some terrain that'll stand up on the table and let you move around. Comes with a bunch of punch-out, like, objective tokens, so that those can now be standardized. Comes with punch-out, like, movement trackers for tagging how fast your mechs are moving, and dice as well. So, very, very pleased with that.
Oh.
The worst news about BattleTech at present is that they moved their Mercenaries, quote-unquote, Kickstarter back to March of the coming year. So, time to just keep squirreling away some cash for that. It looks like there's going to be some vehicles and infantry in that Kickstarter, which is going to be very, very exciting.
Aerospace, too.
Yep. Yeah, because they've done one aerospace model with the clan invasion stuff, and that's also where they put out the elementals, the battle armor. And I noticed that Ironwind was filing a couple of their vehicle sculpts at Gen Con as, like, out of production, retired, however you want to frame that, which is a pretty good indicator that those are going to show up in plastic, which is awesome. I think then that leaves me down to just waiting for the mercenary lances that were still promised by the end of this year. So we were supposed to get boxes for Eridani Light Horse, Kellhounds, Rough Riders, and Highlanders, I think it was. So. Yep, looking forward to that, but unfortunately still no news about when those are going to come out of the pipeline. Yeah. So I think that takes us through it all between hobby progress and everything else. Did anybody else have anything else that they wanted to bring up before we get to I think we only had one release or preview this week. Is that accurate?
Dos.
2. So I know the one was the Blood Angels Heads and Shoulders. What was the other?
The Land Raider, right? Wasn't there another Land Raider?
That was released, but I guess we had seen that before.
Yeah. But then and then the Blood Angels Beaky's
in the pad.
Yeah, those Beakies that seemed to be right up there with Space Wolves in terms of level of strong opinions about them.
I've not seen anything neutral. Let's just put it that way. It's either all one way or all the other way.
It's interesting, though, because the sampling of folks that I were the people who like beaky helmets, like the Blood Angels beaky helmets. People who don't like beaky Marines at all don't like the Blood Angels beaky Marines. The objective criticism, and I don't know how to get around it, but that I think is valid, is that the Blood Angel aesthetic and the Emperor's Children aesthetic is very close, and you could very easily,
I'd say Thousand Suns as well too.
You could very easily interchange beaky helmets from Emperor's Children and Blood Angels, and as long as you paint them, don't paint them purple on a red, they would make good Blood Angels, and you could paint them red and put them on a purple Emperor's Children, and it would look fine because they were doing rainbow things by that point anyway. So, I guess that's a valid objective concern. But I mean, I think everything that I've always read and heard, and them, going overboard in the Baroque art style and all of their armies, and the big painting murals on the side of everything, I think they fit this aesthetic well enough. And if you're gonna play beaky Blood Angels, I'm gonna order like 50 of them. So I mean, I'm one that's on the plus side. I like them. I like beakies. I think they fit what I want to do with my army. They're going to go on my assault marines, which are the at least one unit, which I'm using Sanguinius Guard bodies for. I'm not even using Beaky Marine bodies. I like them. I think that they're perfectly fine. I do think who was it? There was
Jamie Lannister.
Yeah, Jamie. The unhelmeted head definitely looks like Jamie Lannister. Putting that one on a sanguinary guard and painting it up probably makes a lot of sense. Like you just have to put a hook in his hand or something like that. But I get why people might not like them, but I think most of the complaint is they're very much, beakies, and if you like beakies, you're probably going to like them, and if you don't, you're not. So
the counterpoint to that, I don't like beakies. I don't like them. I'm not going to like them. But I like them in
certain applications.
I wish they would sell the unhelmeted heads for all these armies separately. Like, just combine them all into one sprue.
They should.
I like the Jamie Lannister, but I really don't want to buy a bunch of crap just to not use.
Well, I mean, they had one of them recently was Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, John, I'm gonna buy like 5 or 6 sets, and I will not use 5 or 6 Jamie Lannister heads because that's too many. So I will have some Jamie Lannister heads that we can work out a deal for.
Cool, works for me.
I do like the torsos though, because I've always liked that torso set. Not that this is a re-release or anything.
Oh, the Mark III Blood Angel torsos.
Mm-hmm. I use those on pretty much all of them once I have.
The 18-month made to order one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll take forever, but they're really nice heads, or not heads, but they're really nice torsos. They look good. They fit well on the current crop of Marines, and they definitely are flavorful enough to make your army look unique, sprinkled about.
Yep. All right. Do you have anything else to touch on before we move on to our main topic of the evening?
Well, I have one thing that I kind of want to sneak in that I just kind of thought was hilarious. I was looking at some of the Facebook groups and reporting on some of the tournaments that were held this weekend. There's one over in, I think it was Sweden, called the Malmo Wargaming Weekend 6. And it was a 3,000 point heresy weekend, and they had 42 in it. And they released some of the statistics for the armies. So it was a 3,000 point, 42 players. And so, like, vehicle-wise, amongst the 42 players, okay, they posted up a chart. They had 25 land speeders. They had 8 flyers, 15 Spartan, 11 Circarians, 1 Warhound Titan, and 3 Knights. You're like, well, that doesn't sound like a whole lot of vehicles. And then they released another one with statistics for dreadnoughts only. So, dreadnoughts total amongst the 42 armies, there were 65 dreadnoughts in use. There was 3 Castopharium, 42 Contemptors, 10 Dorados, and 10 Leviathans, which I think that kind of is very telling on what's going on play style.
Pointing out a minimum of 1 Contemptor per player.
Yep.
Or an average of, yeah.
No, I mean 42 players, 42 Contemptors.
There's 42 Contemptors, yeah.
There's 1 per player, minimum.
So why is
that
good?
I'm not saying they all brought 1,
but
there's 1 for the count.
That's average.
So I wanted to throw out because is it, there's a part of me that says, okay, that means there's a bunch of players that take Contemptor because they're the thing and everything that goes along with it. I'd like to Primarch split was, or if they allowed Primarchs. But the other part of me says, well, you know what? They just released a brand new box set, and if all these guys are painting up, every box set has a Contemptor in it, right? So is it people pulling on availability of models? Now, I mean, the Plastic Leviathan is a little bit later, painted up, so, there's less of them, but, I wonder how much of it is, people chasing a meta or anything like that.
But if you remember, like, I read out the vehicle statistics.
Yeah, the Spartans weren't.
The Spartans were included in the box set, and there was only, 15 of them in use.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my experience with playing the Swedes they generally are very tough to beat anyway. I mean, I remember playing.
They take 30K seriously.
No, they're hardcore, man. I mean, it's just like, we know Varangi and Heresy, and like when they've come over to Adepticon, I mean, those are some of the guys that you want to play because they're going to give you your money's worth.
Yeah, the DA list back when they had the was it acid rounds or whatever?
The acid rounds, yeah.
Trader DA with acid rounds at 1,250 points was freaking brutal, man. I got chewed up. It was like the first turn. I'm like, maybe I can get 2 objective points out of this game out of a possible 15. And that was like, that was my goal for the rest of the battle. And I did it because there was no way I was winning any after his first turn of shooting. It was just.
I had one of those armies, man. That's what I built out. And it was it was an absolutely brutal army. And I totally had to redo the army because people did not have fun playing it. So,
but every time you play them, it's fun because they just.
Yeah. Those guys are hard. Those guys are hardcore.
But they're also good drinkers.
They're awesome to sit and talk to and play with and chat, and they'd give you the shirt off their back if you needed it, but they'll kick your ass while they're doing it.
While they're doing it, to make sure, yeah.
Yeah, so. They're good guys to play with. They're good guys after the game to sit and chat just about the hobby in general. I mean, when I say they take 30K seriously, it's not just the games they take seriously. It's the effort they put into it, the effort they put into everything.
The lore, the themes of the army, the modeling. Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to throw that out because I saw that and it was kind of getting some traction and some of the other big forums online, and I just thought it was kind of interesting because it was a decent sized event, 42 players. I mean, that's pretty decent right now. So
they do their events serious too.
Yeah.
Like they'll rent out floors of hotels and have rooms where they leave their stuff overnight and it's locked and it's just a heresy event. I mean, they have some serious heresy going on. I know. They
take hobby to a level that a lot of people in a lot of communities can only dream of.
Sorry to derail, but I just thought that was it.
No, I'm glad you did. One thing I love about the hobby in general and the various communities that have popped up about it is the Kentucky, Indiana community, the Texas community, pretty much all the different subsets that we have. We all kind of come together in different ways and support things, like the telethon against Duchesne that recently went on.
I do think it's worth forking off your point to just briefly talk about the fact that we have started seeing more news about the old world fantasy system starting to get dripped out. And I think it was our group chat where Dan posted that and some guys were getting pretty excited. And I personally had to take a step back and kind of collect myself because I realized that I had changed as a person between
that
when...
doesn't happen.
No, it's impossible. Between when the original Old World announcement was made and present, and it doesn't hold me anymore. I don't think anyway. There's totally a chance that I could see brand new Tomb King or Lizardmen models on the shelf, and maybe it will sucker me in all over again. But I think I am absolutely at an intersection of leery about the long-term health of Heresy, more interested in other game systems, and specifically if I wanted to play a fantasy rank and flank, I am more excited for what Conquest has done with that genre than I am with what I anticipate a return to the old world will.
Yeah, I've got probably 8,000 points of Unbuilt Empire, and Cathay would probably get me back into that really hardcore. I just don't know. With time and everything, I have so many other games that I really wanted to do that I realized that I can't. Drop Zone Commander and Drop Fleet Commander are both kind of looking like I should probably just sell them because I honestly haven't touched them since the 1 or 2 demo games I've played with both those games. Occasionally I still pick up a sale price model or something like that, but I haven't opened them or touched them in years, and I've never really painted them. Same thing happens for... I hope the same thing doesn't happen for the Robotech game that I kickstarted. The second Robotech game. The first one failed, obviously, but I played in a few events for that and had a blast. But because that game died so hard, no one around here picked it up. Car Wars was another game that I picked hard into, and a few friends played that, and I never really got anywhere with that.
Like the original Car Wars? Actually, have they ever done new rules, or is it always
repeatedly?
Yeah,
repeatedly.
there's been a few editions coming out, and there's been other games that build off of that too. As well.
Gaslands is the one I've seen a lot of people show interest in.
Yeah, there's a lot of games like that I've gone down the path of throw a bunch of money in a pit, get a bunch of models that take up room in my house, and don't touch them ever again. And
let me talk to you about the game called Warzone.
Dude, I'm so...
Dude, I sold my Mutant Chronicles stuff off, and it made way more money than I thought at the local game store auction. It was awesome. That money paid for my Dragonforge bases.
I did that with, what was that? Fleet base only came out. There was they just re-released it. TT Combat did.
Oh, yes.
Wayland Games, their studio division, War Cradle, same guys who do Wild West.
Yeah, I've gotten so much money dumped into so many pits that honestly, unless I know that I'm buying the starter set with someone anymore, I'm not doing it again. I mean, hell, Aeronautica, I've bought an Imperial fleet and a Space Marine fleet. I've never touched it. Like, I hate to be like old man not having time or yelling at clouds, but at the same time, like, you know, I've got the credit card debt. Why don't I play with the toys? And so it's better just to sell it. Honestly, it's better not to start down that road at all. But at this point, it's better just to sell some of these things than have them taking up room.
Well, the interesting thing with the old world is that I have the Wood Elves, and so either there's enough people that are my friends that jump into it that I can, you know, get inspired to paint them up and play them, or there's enough interest in it that I can find some grognards that want to buy the old stuff and I can sell off my stuff. Now, the one thing that makes me really upset about is I have the green dragon, the forest dragon that has the rider on it, and that model needs so much putty sculpting to put it together and make it a usable model because it was so late in the cast and had so many gaps in the body that you have to mold up leaves all over the damn thing to make it work. At some point in time, I've thought of just molding that over smooth and then painting out bronze and putting a bunch of patina on it and putting it on the table as a piece of terrain because it's so bad that might be the only savable thing for it. But I don't know. I get your point in that one, and when I started thinking about it, I'm like, well, but if they do bring it out, then and I use grognards like it's a bad thing because we're all freaking grognards to some extent when it comes down to it. But, you know, at some point, you know, it might give my stuff to where there's enough interest to where I just decide to sell all my stuff and I can make, you know, good money off of it and be out of that fantasy stuff ever and just be done with it based on the new old world rules. So I don't know. We'll see.
So I sold my Dwarf Army years ago at Adepticon. I used it to fund several boxes of stuff I wanted there. And I've sold other armies that I had fantasy stuff for, and I have no real desire to ever get back into it. But if they ever re-release the Bretonnian Men-at-Arms set, I'm going to buy about 7 or 8 boxes, maybe more, because I loved using those guys to make what looks like trench warfare guard. And I saw a thing in White Dwarf years and years and years back, and someone did them up, and they were called the Genswick rifles. And thank you, yes, Dave Taylor, and I've done my version of those, and I love them. And I would happily use them in Heresy for Solar Rocks because they look utterly unlike regular like Heresy models, but they also look entirely unlike regular 40K stuff. So
it's so well. I've got he goes into how he planned the army, he built it. It's really an eye-opening view of how to plan armies, like we kind of gradually grow into.
You know, speaking of grognards and fantasies, that brings up one of the things that one of the models that I have always wished I had purchased, and I'm not going to go out and buy one now because it's way too much money, but I always wanted to buy and paint was the Green Knight from the Bretonnian Army. That model, when I saw that, it's the first model I looked at, I think, that I said, I should buy this just to build and paint it. I'm never going to play it. And I didn't, and I wish I had. And it goes for more money than I would pay to do it right now. But I still love that model, and I would still, given the chance, build and paint one up and enjoy the crap out of it because that model is so cool.
They did a lot of really cool sculpts way back in the day, but I just can't see myself wanting to get back into fantasy, even just doing that at all.
On that note, I know of something we do want to get into.
Oh?
Or talk about the Michigan GT.
We can do that.
We'll go ahead and cut it here, and when we come back, we'll be in a position to talk about the GT. I think Lemmy and I have quite a bit to talk about with the Michigan GT.
Wait, hold on. Let me set the stage for this. There you are. You're in Michigan. There's a GT. Go.
In a world.
No, I don't think we were inside a world. I don't think anybody played dwarves.
I mean, we also have to give Alex his homage by saying it doesn't qualify as a world because he was, I will say there was, even for a city, a rather inordinate amount of construction going on in that particular area.
Yeah. For a couple guys who are used to frequenting around Indy, Lansing was under heavy amount of construction.
Yeah.
So, as we kind of crack this open and get into it, first off, we want to make sure that we give a huge shout of appreciation to Jeremiah for putting everything together and hosting the Michigan GT. Ever since Jeff went to doing some of the top-level GT stuff, and I think as well some of the Age of Sigmar projects, Jeremiah has taken over for him, it's my understanding, and he's done an excellent job. He has co-opted a couple of Northern Indiana guys, Andy and I believe Dan, and they have kind of formed his Mournival, so they've helped him with mission design and balance, and just kind of running events as they go. So
Matt, I don't think I have got Matt's last name, but the one with the beautiful.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Matt, who ended up being a judge for us. Yes. So big shout to those guys for all the time and resources that they put into coordinating everything, and then on to the event itself. So, for the second year running now, for sure that I'm aware of, the GT has had players bring 2,500 point lists and 3,000 point lists. So your first game Saturday is 2,500 points. Your second game Saturday was 3,000. Then you finish Saturday with a team 2,500 per player. Then Sunday, your opening round is 3,000 points, and you finish Sunday at 2,500. So, this year, I know that they did also do list checks, and I know that they also made some interpretations based on the FAQ. So we did play under advice from Nick, shooting reactions such that you declared the reaction when targeted, but did not resolve that reaction until your inbound fire had been rolled for, basically, was how we did it. Yeah, so as mentioned, or as indicated, I did not end up getting my Thousand Suns done in time for this, and I knew I had a couple guys, namely Alex and Mosier, who played Iron Warriors, and in the case of Alex, he had probably enough Iron Warriors to spare that I could get a whole army together, and so I did. So at 2,500, I took Perturabo, I took a Siegebreaker and a Herald, I took 10 Tyrants, 10 Havocs. Attached to the Havocs were a Tech Marine and an Apothecary. I took a Drill full of Breachers, because Alex has super pretty Breachers, and we didn't know if he'd have enough Tac Squads and Rhinos for me to play them. So I played Breachers, and I have some thoughts on them now. And then a Tac Squad and a Rhino. Daredeo Dreadnought as well. And then moving,
because that's
yes, we can get into that as soon as I finish running. So then 3,000 points saw me bring in, I think it was 2 Choom Sabers and a dual-armed Contemptor, and I think an Apothecary for the Tac Squad and the Rhino, and then I think I may have also had a Neutron Laser Saber in there, if I'm right. Yeah, so I've got some thoughts on that. Namely, just to put it out there and make sure there's no bones about it, I cannot condone, I can't endorse, I can't suggest running the Terrax Termite right now. Yes, I understand, it's wonderful. They put a 3-shot Melt-A-Gun, or well, it's a 3-shot melt-a-pistol on the front of it. That's really cool. Breachers should be really cool this edition, but for me they weren't. If you just look at it on paper, and I did this as part of like squaring up to run or to consider running breachers in my Thousand Suns Orbital Assault, by the time you take a breacher squad and you load it for bear and you put it even in just a drill, it costs as much as 2 tactical squads in rhinos. By the time you get the apothecary and the drill, whole shebang. So even just at base cost, your breacher team is 155 points, and your tactical squad is 100 points. So in order to become a breacher, not only are you paying 50% more than your squad was already worth, you give up Heart of the Legion, and you give up Fury of the Legion, in order to get, admittedly, what is now a nicer 5-up invulnerable save, but when you consider that that is at best a 30% buff to your durability, and you are paying 50% more for it, the economics of making that work just aren't there. And I'm really frustrated that we come into a new edition, and thankfully, like, yes, the Rhino is cap 12. Oh, breachers can't take a Rhino. Oh, but that's fine, the base Land Raider is cap 12. Yeah, but then you're taking a 150 odd point troop, and you're putting it in a 200 plus point Land Raider. I think some math has kind of fallen apart. And for me, like, breachers just don't come together. The generic ones, anyway. I know that there are some lists and some legions that make it work. Medusan Immortals and Bitter Iron, very, very capable. The standard breacher squad and Phalanx Warders in the Stone Gauntlet Rite of War. Horrifically capable, because somebody at Games Workshop forgot all the lessons that they learned as far as don't allow players to reroll saves. I don't understand why we keep learning this and then forgetting it, but I'm really tempted to just like make a log cabin that is the Library of Alexandria and just set it on fire every couple years just to be able to like have the home game of this strategy. More positive note though, boy howdy, those Choom Sabers are super cool toys to play with. Oh my gosh. So by the time you take the Volkite on the nose and the Volkite on top, you're 11 shots, which for my money tended to be like 9 hits, 8 wounds, kill 3 Marines, and then typically grab like 1 more off Deathly Great. You force a leadership check to see if the squad's going to break and run, and now, even if you shoot like a heavy support squad, you've got your opponent really going, do I want to shoot this like 100-point tank, or do I want to try to hold my reaction to shoot those Siege Tyrants over there, or those Iron Havocs over there, because those guys are really going to mess me up and ruin my day. And then, sure enough, like, you shoot the Volkite Saber, you force a leadership check, and you just say, cool, I'm done shooting those guys for the rest of the turn. It's amazing. Or even then, like, you can just bear down and finish them off. Hugely impressed. Cannot overstate. Also, wildly impressed. Perturabo. Perturabo put on his big boy pants, and he slapped... So Nick was my first round opponent. He was playing Fury of the Ancients. He slapped like 3 or 4 dreadnoughts, just all by himself. And Nick just couldn't get out of the way. Unsurprisingly, the combination of Tough 7 and a 3-up invulnerable save, and a shooting attack that I believe is like 6 shots, Strength 6, AP 3, Shred, Shell Shock 1. Anytime there wasn't a dreadnought that was worth shooting at, Perturabo would just light up a squad and mulch a bunch of them, and then anybody who was left alive had to take pinning checks. That kind of persisted through the day. That wasn't super prevalent during the game against Nick, but doubly so because he's a Primarch. You allocate where his wounds go. So by the time I would roll it all up, if the other guy had bought Artificer armor on an Apothecary or a Sergeant, I would just dump all 6 of Perturabo's saves on the Apothecary to start with, and then I'd move to the Sergeant, and sometimes I killed him, sometimes I didn't. But if I killed him, suddenly you have no more feel, no pain, and I need you to test at lead 7 for pinning. Or if I killed both the apothecary and the sergeant, now you're testing at lead 6 for pinning, and I'm probably having you take a break check at the end of the phase regardless. Really, really potent. Really loved playing Percheron. Don't get me wrong, I still think they've done him dirty about some things in the current edition, but with what he can do to your opponent's leadership while leaving you yourself almost immune to leadership, that's a lot of parity that you get to break there in one model. I've talked about some of my winners and losers, and I have some more thoughts on my list, but Lemmy, what did you think of yours? What were some of your standouts?
So, as I mentioned, I really leaned heavily at 2.0 into my Company of Bitter Iron. My list and my take on Breachers, I don't disagree that they are probably a little too expensive base unit. Specialty Breachers this edition, be they Suzerains, Warders, or Medusan Immortals, are fantastic, some of which require a Rite of War to really shine, but yeah, either way. In my opinion, I also wanted to mention, it is for better and for worse, because it is another thing that you lose out versus tactical, is you gain heavy for the standard breacher and above. So you cannot run when you have heavy, but you do get to your armor saves, blast, and template weapons, which is a big deal this edition, since most blast weapons don't pierce your armor. And almost everything's been knocked down to a 4-up, or an AP4, I should say. So heavy, and I say this with experience, heavy comes into play a lot, in my opinion. So I wouldn't understate the value you get out of that. Especially for me, because my take on Breachers was to basically just say, I don't need a vehicle. I'm just going to walk across the table edge. Marines getting that bump up to 7 inches is really nice. I do employ a scout trick. I was running my Iron Hands Grav Mortat and scout 1 unit forward, and that unit becomes a threat with that 6-inch scout followed by a 7-inch movement. They're already in the middle of the board with aggressive weapons and a lot of hard to kill for them. Now that's all being an Iron Hands player, but I digress. Anyways, my list was literally a 20-man, a 15-man, and a 10-man Immortal squad. So I had 3 squads. I ran a Leviathan and 2 Contemptors, and then I had my Iron Father, a Librarian, and a Grav Moritat. That was my 2,500 point list, and at 3,000, I literally just added a 5,000 block, or a 500 point block that was 9 jet bikes, all with Volkite culverin, a Tech Marine on bike, and an Apothecary on bike. And I will tell you this right now, this is a conversation that maybe you guys have had already. The Tech Marine is a problem in 2.0. There's absolutely no problem with the Tech Marine if you say it can't take a Cognos Signum. At present, the Cognos Signum is heavily overloaded, and what will be a 70 point model, 95 if you put them on a jet bike, is way too loaded for bang for buck on that one. It's crazy, especially with the new ridiculous ruling that, oh yeah, if you've got a Machinator Array or a Servo Arm, you can just use that for all of your attacks. Which you go, oh well, why on earth would I use this guy's Power Axe when I can just use a Servo Arm that's going to be strength 8, not strength 5? And it's not a specialist weapon, so I'll still be dual armed. Like, I'm not sure what they were planning or what they were thinking with that ruling, but that was an interesting. But rabbit hole aside, my Immortals were fantastic. I think you pay a lot in terms of the quality of your specialty units outside of Bitter Iron, and not being able to really play your Primar, because what was Inviolable Armor, what is now called Medusan Scales, that -1 strength to shooting is horrendously useful. I mean, that is the identity of that Legion for all of time, and it's really good. I can't tell you the number of times I've been able to take a Feel No Pain save on my Immortals, against Meltas, against missiles, against blast weapons, or strength based, etc. Last Cannon still terrified me, but that was that. I had a lot of fun. My Immortals, like I said, they did really well. I went 5-0 for my running, and I had a great time. I think the most fun that I had was basically I get to play against Salamanders and Iron Hands almost exclusively in my play. And
Iron
so when
Warriors.
Yeah, that's what I said, right?
You said Iron Hands.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
It's all good.
I've been good. Yeah. those are the two legions that that's all I get to play. So my goal going there was like, can I play something not one of these two things? Please, por favor. And I ended up playing basically, I think none of those. I played against Mechanicum, which having a Mechanicum army literally sitting on the floor beside me, got some interesting things to think about that book if there's ever a conversation to be had about it. But Mechanicum, I played against Word Bearers, which was a heck of a lot of fun. I love that dark favor rule that they've got. Although basically the second you've got a unit of Galvor back, you just go, yeah, I'm just going to keep dunking tokens on this unit because they're nuts. I played against Death Guard Fury of the Ancients. I played a team game, 3v3, which was a blast. I had a great time. Played against technically Knights in that, which I would love to talk about Knights at some point too, because they're in an interesting boat right now. But had a great time. I think I don't have any exceedingly big standout moments, apart from the fact that Iron Hand's advanced reaction Gorgon Spite is insanity on a 20-man unit of Immortals with 4 Melta-Guns plus 1 on your Iron Father. Somebody charged me with a Knight Lancer in the team game, and I was like, all right, I'm going to Gorgon Spite, and the Knight had taken 0 damage before that, and then exploded on his way in. He didn't even get to close combat space. So Iron Hands feel very solid. I think the edition has some pain points that need to be addressed for sure, but overall, I really have been enjoying 2.0. I think it's a big step up in terms of the quality of the army that you're playing, if the addition around it is a little bumpy in places. And I think the biggest one for me is shooting reactions, I think.
So I can hinge a little bit off of your talk about Tech Marines and their Cognis Signum. So round 2 for me was up against Andy and his Raven Guard, and nothing that I've done has made me so excited yet terrified to try to play an army. Because sure enough, he took Korax, and he took a unit of 10 Dark Furies with 3 Sergeants. He strapped an Apothecary to them. He strapped a Chaplain to them. He strapped a Praetor to them. And he charged right at my face. And Korax whipped out his pistols, and he shot my Siege Tyrants. And it was at that moment he realized he had messed up. Because then I used the Iron Warrior's reaction to double return fire at the Furies. And he went, oh, that's fine. I've got Feel No Pain. You can't claim. Right, because you have Strength 8 Crackness. Yep. And he's like, that's fine. I can just tank these on Korax then, and I can use his 2-up armor chased by 4-up Shrouded. And I went, you can't claim Shrouded against this unit. Why not? Oh, right. The Omniscope that gives them night vision, which night vision lets you Shrouded. I see. So what had, admittedly now, I had shot them on the turn prior, but I did let him use the Raven Guard reaction to dodge out of the way. But I had basically killed his 3 Artificer Armor Sergeants and maybe 1 other model. So here comes 6 Dark Furies, their Apothecary, a Praetor, a Chaplain, and Korax. And by the time I had finished my shooting, Korax had 1 wound left on, and everybody else was dead.
Well done, sir.
Because Iron Warriors and Iron Hands, those 2 legions, have basically the exact same reaction, except Iron Warriors is a return fire, and Iron Hands is an overwatch. But effectively, it's the same thing. It's just a different.
Yep.
But yeah, the ability to fire as much as you can with literally no drawbacks, even like, oh, cool, in the movement phase, I can move away from you, and then fire heavy weapons in the following shooting phase. Like, I have a big... Even as a shooting player, I have a big problem with how much economy you get out of shooting in this game right now.
Yep. And that's
the shooting phase and reactions with shooting heavy weapons and various other phases is a little bit over the top, in my honest opinion.
Yeah, well, and so that's what I've tried to explain to the other Iron Warriors players who they have expressed some frustration that, sure, their Siege Tyrants got a second wound, but relative to a lot of others, they still don't get a stat bump. And I had to explain to them that I feel very strongly that with this edition seemingly encouraging players to take heavy support squads, your Tyrants break a lot of parity with those heavy support squads. I don't know that you should take a 10-man unit of them anymore. I don't know that you should be like, duct taping Perturabo and quite as many HQ choices to them anymore. But the fact of the matter is that when you can fire on heavy support squads, and you have night vision baked in that they to my knowledge can't really get rid of. It might be relegated to the sergeant, but even still, like, you can just allocate away from him. And then you not only get to move and fire, you get to move and fire, and you have an invulnerable save, and it's a 4-up invulnerable. So even if they have the best cover available to them, which is a 5-up right now, you're still getting past that. You have night vision native, so you don't have to strap on a tech marine to be able to get that, and to ignore the penalties for night fight to your leadership and to your ballistics skill. There's still a lot that they do.
I'll also add that Cataphractii do have the heavy type, which I was talking with Breachers. Those rerolls against those blast templates that could double you out.
Is heavy armor only, or is it all saves?
It is armor saves.
Okay. That's still alright, though, because you... Like, the biggest thing that I felt like I could ever be afraid of with the Tyrants was, I guess, like, the large blast plasma that Dreadnoughts get, but even then, like, cool, I've got a 4-up invuln, you don't instant death me, let's go.
I also think, like, I'm shocked at people saying that Iron Warriors just aren't shooting very well right now. I was like, well, you have Tyrants, which I agree with you. I've heard your commentary about it, but, like, you also got the Iron Havocs, which are pretty darn good.
So I can at least, like, play devil's advocate and play sympathetic to Iron Warriors players at this. So, first off, they were lamenting Siege Tyrants before Fulmentaris shipped, and now that Fulmentaris are out there, and they get BS5, and they get AP2, and they're still Strength 8, and they're Brutal 2, and they ignore line of sight, that's a lot for any player to swallow, but especially those players who already feel like, A, Ultramarines are advantaged because Suzerains just got better, seemingly, and B, when other legions got boons that you didn't get, insult to injury. And then Havocs, don't get me wrong, I got a lot of mileage out of Havocs, and especially the fact that they have precision shot 6+. But for, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of just 20 or 30 more points, you can get Sun Killers. Now, we talked about this a little bit in kind of broader strokes, where Havocs do get a lot of boons that Sun Killers will never see. You do still get the Iron Warriors trait. You do still get Perturabo, who can give you leadership on 3d6. But the vacuum of just looking at the Havoc sheet and looking at the Sun Killer sheet shows you a BS5 heavy support squad with las cannons that's within 20 or 30 points of each other. The Sun Killers, their sergeant can buy a surgical upgrade for the Sonic Pulsar, which will give them the night vision rule native. Iron Havocs can't do that. They get +1 on the vehicle damage table against Knights, Titans, and I think they also get something against Gargants. But, and then I think they just have precision shot flat on Sun Killers. I haven't double checked that, but
I don't think it's flat. I think it might be. I'd have to look it up, but I don't think they. But I will point out, Knights are a terrible one and done ally this edition, for numerous reasons. But like I feel like you get a heck of a lot more out of the Iron Warriors trait by itself for that unit than you do out of the rerolls on Knights.
And I do agree, especially having played Iron Warriors and gotten certain things to shake out the way I did. But I'm trying to both play to the, hey, this stuff is really good, but also be sympathetic to players who are frustrated by what hand they feel like they've been this edition.
And I think it's also favored, like what you call it, Emperor's Children, which the Sun Killers are their specialty unit of Expat, I want to say. Their entire Legion identity is based on the turn you charge to an assault. And while I will not say assault is irrelevant in this game, like that's what that Legion has to do to actually get a lot of its boons, is to actually charge into close combat. And so I'm kind of okay with them getting a unit that is at least up to snuff or is comparable in some degrees, because they don't get as much boon in the shooting phase. And that's very subjective of me to say, but I think shooting armies are in a much more advantageous position, more so than Horus Heresy 1.0 than assault armies, and I could be absolutely wrong in stating, but it does feel that way.
I think that's pretty contentious right now. I don't know that we have a good enough sample size because I know of at least 1 or 2 Iron Warrior players who feel like their lines were just getting overrun turn 2, turn 3, because run is now a fixed role, because the base Marine is faster, because Assault Marines are even faster still, whether it's justified or not. Funneling kind of back in onto games, I do want to put something out here, especially having praised and specifically to praise and highlight the Michigan GT. This is one of the better events I've ever been to. Very pleased, very happy, can't wait for the next one. Please, for the love of the War Master, for the love of the Emperor, for the love of whatever figure you want to put it for, stop making me play team games. I might be in the minority here. I might be the only person who doesn't want this. Please stop making me play team games. I don't have the patience for it. I don't have the attention span for it. And unfortunately, disproportionately, they end up feeling like blowouts based on who goes first because of some factors. And that, unfortunately, at this particular GT, led to a very negative experience for one of my third round opponents. And they chose to reciprocate that, which is unfortunate and something that nobody really ever wants to see or experience. But I even did say this last year, as far as, please stop making me play team games. If you want to put the option out there as an event organizer, and you want to let people, especially for round 3 where this is the last round of the night, and then players go to dinner or whatever, just not a fan. Team games are not for me.
Yeah, I got wrapped into it because I was getting ready to play with Matt as my ally, and we had an odd number of people because people were kind of bailing. So I ended up playing in a 3v3 game. I'm of a different mind. I agree with you. I think mandatory team games, I don't really care for that because not everybody wants to go. And to be honest, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to find, especially in a game like where basically they only had one list. You bring one list for each points level, and that was what you brought. And sometimes you can be like, I really want to play with this guy, but our lists just don't synergize like at all, and you'll get like rained by a team that does work together well.
Yeah, I felt having done this last year with my Alpha Legion list, which was highly reserves dependent, I felt really bad for whoever ended up being the Blood Angels Day of Revelation team player, because you have like over 2,000 points of that army seemingly that starts in reserve, and boy howdy, having 3,000 points on the table to get shot by 5,000 points is a lot.
I will go to bat and say that it should not be mandatory. I loved my team. It was one of my favorite experiences. Had a lot of great times with a lot of guys. But yeah, it's long, and I think you're right, because we talked about this on the ride back. Their time slot for it's perfect. Make it the last game of the first day. Great, perfect, done. Don't make it mandatory. They just take too long, and I think shoehorning people into that can be a bit rough. But I do encourage them to continue offering it because I think it is a lot of if you get the people who are of a mind to do that, for sure. I think my big tournament level thing that I didn't hate, I was actually kind of proud of being able to roll with the punches, was going in blind to missions and what the like attacker and defender roles were going to be. Because I absolutely found myself going, yeah, I want to be the attacker. I want to be the aggressor and do something. And then I got to the mission. I was like, my army, like the objective was basically for the defender was hold the line, kill people. The objective for the attacker was to literally walk your units off the enemy's back table. And it's hot dog deployment. And I'm like, well, I'm the attacker. I had no idea this was the mission. And all 50 of my infantry are heavy, can't run. I was like, I actually
long game to get there.
Yeah, well, I pulled out the victory. As I mentioned, it was actually a lot of fun. I loved that it challenged me to have to play very differently. But I did the math, and it was like, if movement reactions weren't a thing, if I wasn't able to advance and withdraw tactically as I did, I would not have been able to mathematically win that game. I could not have gotten those infants off the board. I would have gotten my bikes, I would have gotten my Moritat, and that's it. So to some degree, like, I couldn't be upset. Obviously I did well. And it was a very fun game. It was against Word Bears, which meant I had to run headlong into Galvorback, which I don't recommend anyone does, by the way. They're terrifying.
They're very angry. They're still angry this edition.
I mean, like, their anger was on par with my bitterness, because he ripped through me like a hot knife through very bitter, oily boys. But yeah, it was fun. But I wish I don't need to know every detail. I think even if you just say, hey, here's a breakdown of the mission. Here's like basically 1 or 2 sentences of fluff. Here's a sentence of what the defender is going to be doing. Here's a sentence of what the attacker is going to be doing. Okay, pick and choose. Now we're going to have War Masters declare players. That to me would be great. Because,
and that is something that I can say with Nick and I having been respective War Masters. That's something that we're hoping to be able to get to roll with next time. So I don't know if you noticed, but Nick and I, after the first round, we started handing slips and rules packets to players, or rules sheets, I should say, and Nick was writing down zones so that we could keep track on the star map of who played where. And I think that us intervening to do that helped expedite things, as well as like keep score sheets tidy so that we knew like who was actually fighting what where, because I think when we kicked things off, now we did see quite a few drops, but we had 16v16. Admittedly, 4 of those 32 odd players were there pretty exclusively for Titanicus, but that was still immense. I think that marks.
Only 2 were exclusive. We had 2.
Okay. But that marks, I believe, the largest Heresy event that I've been to that's not named Adeptic.
So I'm going to broaden this because we got a couple of guys who've been in the chat, and I want to keep talking about the GT for sure. But so curious, this is just kind of around for everybody who's in the podcast. How many games of Horus Heresy have you guys roughly played? I don't need an exact number, just like a ballpark.
2.0.
The new edition.
2.0. Yeah, 2.0.
10, 15.
Yeah, I would say I'm at what 3? I'm at like 8 to 10 probably.
2. That's all I've had time for so far.
3 or 4, depending on how you count them.
I'm at either 9 or 10.
So I have had a chance to play prior to the GT. I was at 22 games of Horus Heresy. And of those 22, 19 were with my new Iron Hands. I would say that at this GT, there was a pretty broad sense that a lot of people that I had played against had been probably in a realm like about where most of you guys are, because there was a lot of people kind of looking over their armies and whatnot. So I think what's going to be interesting for me to see is where this all shakes out in terms of like the final meta that basically kind of presents itself from baseline 2.0. But why I bring this up is something that I have noticed since I got into Horus Heresy was basically, did you go to an event? I hope you were a traitor, because you probably won if you were a traitor, and you probably lost if you lost. I just like not always the case. Not saying individual generals. I'm saying like the faction level quality kind of thing. Like in total, I felt like loyalists had much more legions in much worse places in 1.0, and I feel like that is very much not the case right now. Quite the opposite, actually. I think the loyalists have a lot of very strong legion rules, but the players, I'm interested to see where you guys think the game is going to go from a like macro balance sense, like loyalist versus traitor, because I feel like it's much closer army to army in this edition. Not looking at the rules and the general rules, just one army's versus another's.
I feel, and this just could be some of the experience that I've had, is I seem to feel more that the rock, paper, scissors is harder. That it's more, you will walk up to the table and immediately know, like, wow, I can do nothing. So like my jet bike list that I built had, whenever I see Night Lords, I just move tables. Because there's no freaking way that I can do anything, because I just ignore all what little jinking can do to help me. I can't do it against them. The other thing that I've seen, especially in some of the events, is it seems almost like people's mindsets regressed to early 1.0, and saying that, I mean, there's a lot of box armies, a lot less people taking specifically, at the end of 1.0, we saw smatterings of units where you maybe had 2 or 3 a whole army, whereas now you're seeing more people taking repetitive, these are my 4 tac squads, or this is my 3 or 4 X unit that I'm trying to build the army on. I see more cookies in the cookie cutter than before, where I would see, okay, I'm taking these, one of this, one of this, one of this, one of this, and of that thing, a Death Star. So that's how I've seen a lot of games. Specifically, what kind of surprised me is it's like we went back in time as far as army list compositions.
I do agree with your first point that yes, I feel like those things that counter other things do so exponentially more so than what they did.
Yep.
And that is not particularly encouraging to me on the whole. And some of it is not just the kind of thing that you can solve by telling players bring as many army lists as you want. Because some things, like we mentioned, or like you mentioned, if Night Lords have night vision across the whole army, like, cool. Really hope you never wanted to take this evade reaction. Iron Warriors, I felt like I had so much night vision that, same story. What was Raven Guard ever going to do to try to gain advantage against me when they were in the position they were in? I will also say, to your cookie cutter point, first off, I got to play against the Banana Men, I'll lovingly call it. It was 100 Imperial Fists Tactical Marines, 10 Missile Heavy Support Dudes, 10 Las Cannon Heavy Support Dudes, a squad of 10 Templar Brethren with the Praetor attached, and 2 Leviathans. Boy howdy, that's a lot of dudes. That's a lot of dudes. And I think some of it is, yes, that you do have new players coming into the game. So I know that the guy who was playing the 100 Tactical Marines, this was like his first Heresy event, so I was super stoked to see that. My 5th round opponent, he was apparently a regular at Adepticon, but this was the first time that he was able to make it for something that wasn't Adepticon. Again, same story, very excited to see that guy. And I could probably point to another 3 to 5 guys that I had either never seen before, or who would self-profess this was like their first time at Heresy. Thrilling. Absolutely exciting. But when last edition, even though you still had objectives as 3 to 5 of the missions at their core, you had many different ways to get line choices. Typically, Terminators were line. Vets were lines. You could do different things with Terminators, with Vets. People could get super spicy and they could take Seekers. There were things that you could do to get alternative scoring choices so that you could take a fully Highlander army and not even just like, oh, I took 2 tactical squads. Like, you could take 1 tactical squad and then Breachers or Assault Marines or something just to change it up and go crazy. And that's kind of been stripped from us. Unless you want to dedicate an HQ slot to a Herald, you kind of got to keep taking core choices just to be able to get those line choices. Because I think the only things that got to keep line were Lernaean Terminators and Suzerains. And then past that, the other thing that makes me feel like a big callback to early days of Heresy 1, maybe not all the way back to like day 0, where it was the Spartan, like just take your box of boys and pile them into a Spartan and mash them into the other guy's Spartan full of a box of boys, and then whoever pops out of that is going to win it. But for a minute there, for like 2 or 3 years, I saw a rash of people regularly running command squads. And I think that with the command squad having line, I think you definitely see a big rash of players returning to command squad based lists just because they feel strongly that they want a choice that's not a tactical squad.
I think they did like the change to weapon skill, with 4 hitting weapon skill 5 on 5s now. That weapon skill 5 is huge addition for when you get into melee. And I personally feel like there's absolutely 0 reason to take the generic Legion Terminator variants out of the elite slot when you could go, or I could take the command squad that is weapon skill 5 and scoring. I personally feel like the trade-off there could have been if you would have made, like, it's fine if you want the command squad to be scoring, whatever, they got the banner, doo-doo-doo. I feel like the generic termies should have gotten line baked in. Can't take them as troops, you can swap them in if you're running Pride, whatever, but I feel like if those guys still had scoring, there's a huge point for that unit to exist. Like, they basically become a scoring unit that goes after the enemy's weaker scoring units. They're not going to go after their weapon skill 5 super dudes. You could play a really cool bruiser unit. You made the argument about that with like Gorgon and whatnot. But like with him not having line, I feel like that was a big miss on their, like, that unit could have been quite useful, but not. But yeah, I think generally speaking, I don't disagree. I don't mind seeing more core troops in the game. Admittedly, I'm running a swap army right now, and I'd like to move away from that. That's the plan in the future. The most swaps don't gain line, and you can swap them, but it's really just to open up a slot, more or less. Which in theory seems like it should be opening up more options, because it's like, well, yeah, you can take a Predator as a troop, but it's not going to be scoring, so you still need your tactical squads. But what that affords you is an extra heavy support that allows you to play something different in your actual potential for some more variety's sake. But honestly, it comes back to what Jacob was talking about. Like, the most efficient troop in the game right now is the 100-point tactical squad that you can put a few upgrades on. And so it's hard to make the argument if you're playing a thematic or a Legion-specific build, like, for example, Blood Angels taking us. It's hard to argue against the tactical squad. They're just so cheap.
Well, so that really, like, kind of sets up for, and we've talked about it before, I think, John, you were maybe the first one to report on this, where you were like, I got my Assault Marines out, and I'm not making that mistake again. They're going back in the box.
Yep. Yeah, goes back to what you were saying, both of y'all were saying about, Weapons 4, and my buddy and I were having this discussion today because he was talking about what Eldar are going to change, and I was like, man, I'd almost hope to see Weapon Skill 5 across the army for Eldar, or something like that, if you're looking at how Panopticon's going to change it, because Hollis has handed it off. They need something, and I'm worried about this specifically for my militia, is what is a Weapon Skill 3 army going to, because a Weapon Skill 4 army is going to just body them. And that's what I saw with those Assault Marines, was I got charged by Justarin. They're all, axes and fists, so they're going last. But 20 Assault Marines couldn't cause a wound because I failed to hit. And the ones that did hit, would either fail to wound because of my crappy rolling, even with Shred, or because you got to save it. Because they're just so... That Weapon Skill 5 tank is so large of a drop off.
I think there's some room to play Assault Marines if you're Blood Angels, especially if you're taking Sanguinius, because he will make them weapons 5 on the charge.
Yeah.
But, like, I am perversely excited to not run any Assault Marines that aren't named Dark Furies in a Raven Guard list, because they made a change to the Raven Guard special rule, so that if you have a jump pack or are heavy, you get to reroll your ones to wound during the first round of combat. So let's see here. What do Raven Guard play that have jump packs or are heavy? Or, I'm sorry, bulky. Bulky counts here too. Assault Marines, oh wait, the Chain Sword grants Shred. Okay, well, I can run Terminators. Well, are you sure you want to do that without weapons 5? Well, okay, maybe I go for the X-Bat unit and I run Deliverers, because those are weapon skill 5 and they get battle hardened 1. By the way, super excited to try running a unit of those, but what are you gonna equip them with? Raven's Talons. What do those do? Shred. So somebody wrote that rule without knowing, or without understanding, that basically anything Raven Guard we're gonna get into close combat with anyway, unless it has a Power Fist, I guess. That those units were all already gonna be re-rolling to wound. And it's so wasteful. And then unfortunately, so that means running tactical squads that are gonna get shrouded 6+, and as soon as somebody can see in the dark, we'll just put that away. I don't need that. That's fine.
I personally feel like, and I can see what they're going for, I get it, but from a games mechanic standpoint, I feel like if you're weapon skill 5, you should hit weapon skill 3. Absolutely, makes perfect sense. I personally feel like if you are one weapon skill below your enemy, you should still hit. I think the game almost requires that to make weapon skill 4 actually threatening against a skill 5 unit without basically being busted. And because I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, you guys might have a very different opinion, but just it was like you said. Oh, your weapon skill 4 versus my 5. I don't care what rules you have because you're only going to hit like 5 times, and then like I'll take my 4 up saves, and I might lose a dude or two, and then I will mulch your unit because I'm weapon skill 5 and you're not, and I'll be hitting you on 3s and have all these other war gear options and whatnot. So it feels like the disparity between weapon skill 4 and 5 units is just too great right now to really allow the game to be healthy.
I will say I do get to rebut this a little bit. I did get my Siege Tyrants to charge Nick's command squad. The command squad which had surrounded the drill and blew it up and killed all the dudes inside because trapped. Spoiler, that happened in 3 of my 5 games.
I despise that rule. I've always despised that rule. I hate
it's just funny. It's just funny. That's the only way I can talk about it. And the good news, like, I played the Breachers expecting that was probably going to happen, and thankfully I got the data point to confirm that yes, it does.
Just as a solid point to that, I don't know, maybe we don't need to talk about it if you don't want. I think Breachers are a unit that are too expensive to buy transport, personally. I think you just have to walk them.
And that's definitely possible. I don't really know how successful they will or won't be walking, but I'm open to that idea.
More so than when you put them in a drill, because nothing works in a drill. Because it's worthless.
But I'll go so far as to say, so I charged his Blood Angels with his command squad with my Siege Tyrants. This is after I refused to shoot him because I know how the Blood Angels' unique reaction works. So I charged in, he elected to hold fast, give me no bonus attacks. Admittedly, this was a specific case for Michigan, but I had a Blood Angels tag, so I got preferred enemy Blood Angels for this one turn. And I don't even think Perturabo was attached to the Siege Tyrants at the moment that I did this. But sure enough, I killed the command squad down to, I think it was just the Praetor and like one of his dudes with a power sword. I won combat by a bunch, so they broke, and they ran. And then at the start of the next turn, they failed to regroup, so they ran again.
I think it's also a very estranged circumstance of, I'm not sure how many people besides Iron Warriors play a big, fat, 10-man
Terminator squad and expect it to do anything.
No involves. I don't think that happens all too often, but I could.
Hilarious. What got funnier is that was my first match of the weekend, was scaring Blood Angels so badly that they almost ran off the table. And my last game of the weekend was against Ultramarines. I blew up their Spartan. They refused to face me on the field of battle because for each character you kill in a challenge, you get a victory point, and each model in a suzerain squad is a character. So I shot them, and I shot them, and I shot them, and they broke. And then at the start of the next turn, they ran further. And then finally, they regrouped. But boy howdy, does that fill me with a certain flavor of something to shoot Ultramarines and Blood Angels, these proud, strong armies, shoot them enough that they break and they run, and they're just like, nope, don't want any part of that. I'll have none of that. Thank you, sir. I'm good.
The candy stripes too strong.
Fulmentaris. Fulmentaris, as it turns out, for anyone who has been alarmed about them, when you have short edge deployment, especially so round 5, we did the triangular short edge deployment. It becomes really difficult to get their 24-inch range into range, even if you ignore a line of sight, but you don't ignore a line of sight until you don't move.
And that is my key argument for everybody who says that Fulmentaris are just strictly better than Siege Tyrants, because I was like, I'm sorry, no. I flat out, I don't think so. They are tactically a very in my opinion. I
don't disagree, but I do, like I said, I am sympathetic to the, hey, I looked at this unit's profile and I looked at my unit's profile, and I don't understand.
I think on paper, Fulmentaris look ludicrous, but then when you see them in practice, I played against them 3 times as a short-ranged army. Now, Iron Hands, I get it. I still get a feel of pain against their missiles. Not a lot of people get that. Practically nobody gets that. Totally understand I've got a jaded or a biased or an untraveled opinion on that matter. However, that unit, if it gets knocked out of position or has to try to get somebody who's not in the range bracket, is a lot of points to absolutely nothing because they have to move and can't get line of sight. Because they move 6 inches like the old Marines because they slow. And yeah, I do agree with you. On paper, they look really good, but just in practice, they're not as tactically flexible, in my opinion, as the siege tyrants. And also just because like weight of fire, like rolling a lot of dice in this game is strong. I mean, heck, like that's been a mentality for the orc army since the game came out 35 years ago. Roll more dice, you get more odds of success. They roll twice as many dice. Not as many hits, I get that, but the weight of fire still works.
Do Fulmentaris, I haven't looked at the unit entry, do they get to ignore line of sight with their bolters as well? Do they even get firing protocols too, like Siege Tyrants do?
They do get to ignore. It says all shot.
Okay, that's pretty funny.
They get cyberpunk curve bullets, basically, but I mean, there's definitely a thing where you have to look across the opponent, like, and basically say, like, hey, I'm not going to fire my bolters, can't see. Yes, it's in the rules, but I mean, here's another example. The Scorpus Whirlwind can take a searchlight, and somehow, because it targeted you with its indirect missile launchers, it bounced the searchlight off of something reflective in space, and it came right back down and pinned you.
Yeah, I can actually explain that. It's there's the moon and the overcast sky was in just the right place, and then there was a satellite that was low flying because Elon Musk and
potatoes.
Honestly, it's like the only thing I could think of is like legit, like a Marine got up on top of the Rhino with a selfie stick and like put a mirror on the stick and kind of like arced it over the wall and was like, "There they are, boys, get them!" Like it's just there's a lot of really crap rules writing 0.0. I can point as an Iron Hands player. I get to go look at my Medusan Immortals with boarding shields that they can't not take, with the option to take a two-handed weapon, which a boarding shield says you can't use. What on earth is going on, G-dubs? I will say, overall, I really do like 2. It's not a perfect system. It absolutely has fundamental flaws. Some of them very glaring, some of them kind of minor little things that, addressed. But I do, from a core standpoint, think the game is a lot more enjoyable from the more things are viable. And I personally like the fact that there's not a lot of AP2 and 3 in the game more from ranged. That is one of the things I do appreciate. You can't just delete a unit out of the game, because by removing that, it does make the quote-unquote meta harder to chase. It's not about who brought more big guns that leads the units, and more about how do you have effectively. And unfortunately, some of that also comes down to who had the better dice. If you're playing a game that doesn't delete something, or a unit that can't delete something, if the other person, legit, I played a game against Salamanders, he fired a bunch of Volkite and said, all right, take 21 saves on that 10-man unit. And I was like, well, I've got a Vigilator. I don't really care. He's got a 2-up armor save. I'll just take it until I take 1, and then I'll pass them on. He didn't fail a single one. Not one. He tanked 21 Volkite shots.
Yep.
Yeah, like in this game, it's going to be a lot more about who had the DM player killing dice and who didn't, unfortunately. I think that's going to be one of the big things that's going to happen in this edition on a long-term scale, is basically like who had better luck. And some of that's realistic and some of that's not, but for better and for worse, that's my opinion.
I do want to rebut something. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, there were times in 1.0 where, I would see a new unit table and I would be like, oh, what do they do? And if it took you more than 30 seconds to explain it, I was like, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to blow them up first. So I do like that that's kind of gone. You do have to worry about what everything can do at certain stages.
Yep. There's a few things that don't work as well as they did before, or work in different ways as they did before. But one of my big concerns as a person who really loves the hand-to-hand combat phase, as I say, with the Iron Warriors over there in the unused pile for a number of years versus the Sons of Horus and the World Leaders. I really don't like quite how heavily shooting has become almost the be-all, end-all of everything versus hand-to-hand. I know in editions past, in 40K, it was the other way around, but in this one right now, it's definitely the ubiquitous last cannon squad that everybody and their grandfather has, or the I'm declaring a charge, and oh god, how many shots am I taking from whatever? And then I'm getting shots from that squad right beside it as well. Or yeah.
Yeah, that was something I know you're going to say something, Jacob. I just want to tag on. Like, that was something I pegged relatively early on. Is I thought that like las cannons are way too cheap for what you get out of it. But I will let Jacob talk.
I don't know if I'll immediately point to las cannons as being too cheap. I know that I can pretty readily say that the community is trying very hard to do a lot of different. I did see a number of players who just kind of acquiesced to the state of being, and they were like, "Yep, totally gonna run dreadnoughts." And then I saw other players who were just like, "Yep, totally gonna run this las heavy because that's the state of where we're at." And I did see a lot of players also trying very hard to not do one, the other, or in some cases both of those things. I think that if we, 12 months into this game system, don't have a fundamental adjustment to Contemptors, I think that they are the black hole that balance will. I've made that prediction since like day one, and I saw their stats and points and everything. And again, I do applaud the community trying very hard to not do that. But I think the intersection, especially the intersection between Contemptors and Fury of the Ancients as it stands, is kind of a collapsing singularity.
I don't disagree. I think on its face, I think Fury of the Ancients has to be played responsibly because that one is just absurd. Like, there's just no reason. But I will say, I think Contemptors, if you keep yourself to 2 Contemptors at most, 2 Contemptors get workable.
Yes, I think there's ways to run them responsibly, and I applaud Nick for his experimentation with, is it possible to run Fury of the Ancients responsibly? Absolutely, I'm glad we're looking at these things. But I know that there's only so long. So the same way that like some players are like, oh, we're just going to keep playing the old edition. That only works for so long. Eventually players cannot keep their blinders on and they're like, nah, there's something shiny over there. There's only so long you'll be able to get people to pursue alternative army comp where Terminators as they stand are as they stand and Dreadnoughts stand as they stand.
My push talk button's getting one bit. I think that right now Contemptors, in my opinion, I don't really prescribe that they need to be knocked to a 3-up save. I think that's kind of silly, given that my thoughts on like Terminator armor is Dreadnought armor. That's my personal opinion. I do think, and this is across the board. This isn't even a Dreadnought thing. I think you solve a lot of issues, in my opinion, not all, but the return fire, the Overwatch, all that crap. I think every last model in the game should be knocked to the defensive. Like, you can only return fire or Overwatch with a strength 6 gun or below. Period. Flat. The end. I don't care if you're a Dreadnought, infantry, vehicle. I think that solves a lot of that. But personally, I think those reactions are overtuned even at that point. But I think even that as a middle ground would do a lot to pull back on some of that power. But I would be okay if they were like, yeah, we're going to pull back 1 wound on every Dreadnought chassis. Just 1 wound less. I think that would make them a lot more in line or fair. I also personally would just like to be like, yeah, the brutal 3 on a Contemptor is probably a bit much. I think if you split the difference and say that their melee attacks get to go up to strength 10 instead of strength 9, but they go down to brutal 2, there's a discernible difference between a Dreadnought's big, giant, pinchy hand and a Thunderhammer without that rule basically being like, I don't care what your invulnerable save is, you're going to fail it because Brie.
So I've been talking about, this is kind of a weird thing, but if they could make like, if they could make like a half brutal. So if you get 2 wounds, it counts as 3 or something like that. You could add that into some of the other minor weapons and you could then deal with Dreadnoughts better. So maybe take Shred, and if you've got Shred against a Dreadnought or something like that, that's going to take Dreadnoughts down. If you could say every X wounds becomes X plus 1 or X plus something like that, where you're adding in more wounds to the specific problem children of the game, I think you might see something a little different. That's just one of the things that I've been throwing around in my head.
Yeah, I had suggested, like, if you move the Dreadnought down to Brutal 2, and then you move the Thunderhammer to Brutal 4+, I think that moves to start mitigating it. And I think if we're not touching the save on Dreadnoughts, never mind like points changes or upgrades. I think you've got to demolish the Dreadnought Talon rule and knock them down to behaving like vehicle squadrons. The fact that you can, especially again in Fury of the Ancients, that you can take 6 of them, they're all scoring, and after deployment they act entirely independently. I just like what are armies supposed to do when you can get 2 fully functioning Contemptors in 1 elite slot, and meanwhile, like, you've got Terminators over there who not just do they not function right now, but you even, like, you need to find a way to get them to do what you need them to do, because they don't come with any guns that do anything. They don't come with any close combat weapons to speak of that do anything, and they are probably 6-inch movement and heavy.
Yeah,
and again, that's also kind of framed with the context of knowing the state that vehicles are kind of in right now.
Vehicles are in the same state that they were, with the notable exception of squadrons, in my opinion.
Moving to a strength 8 explosion that causes pinning really
and that's
harmful.
That's what I mean about the squadrons thing. Like,
They're
you
all
have, like,
easier to hit in combat.
they're easier to hit in combat. Is that what you said?
Yeah, you hit them on 2 up.
Oh, I thought you still hit them on 3.
Nope.
Okay. Well, I mean, like, they're worse off because things like las cannons got cheaper and better because Sunder
and crack grenades now auto hit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was a conversation. So yeah, like they are noticeably weaker. I should say, but in terms of like this, like the vast majority of it, if you're firing bolters or something like that, well, you can't wound the front armor of a Rhino with a bolter because the only thing you can get is strength 10. So I think they're putting a higher value on the fact that like small arms and maybe sometimes medium fire can't hurt most tanks. But unfortunately, what they did was they cranked up the power level on the anti-tank weapons, and those things just roast tanks for. So yeah, there's certainly.
Hence my suggestion that I made right at the beginning is we all convert our Rhinos to truck bombs.
And that's why I have that many Rhino.
That's why my armies keep including them. Dump the despoilers or tacticals out and send a truck bomb on, because they're going to have to deal with it. And the moment they blow it up, suck a strength 8 detonation.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing that the Chum Saber had going for it. Is it's just like, what are you gonna do? You gonna shoot me with that las cannon? Oh yeah, you better shoot me with that las cannon. I'd hate to see what happens if you blow me up in the middle of your army.
That's why, like, people were talking about, like, melta-bombs when this edition kind of came out. Like, who can take melta-bombs? I'm like, those are a trap right now. Just crack grenade everything, because melta-bomb's going to blow it up, and then you're going to kill your guys that just killed the dang tanks.
Yep.
Just crack grenade it.
And especially since melta-bombs don't auto-hit dreads. I think my only other big takeaway was that the Daradeo's not in a particularly pleasant spot right now. Until or unless, and I know I'm I'm about to advocate giving a Dreadnought buffs. Shame on me. Until or unless you give the back mount split fire, I don't think that I would take a different arm mount on it than the Chum Gun or maybe autocannons. Yes, you could take the las cannon on it and just kind of go for it, but it is so hard for me to advocate for that las cannon platform when I know that you could take a Castaferum Dreadnought or a Contemptor and put 4 las cannons on it. It would probably be cheaper than the 2 las cannon shots you get out of the Daradeo.
It's actually not, but
sure. Yeah, but, I mean, if nothing else, quantity has a quality all its own.
Yeah, and the quad las cannons would do better against, like, a 2 wound, 2 up armor save unit, absolutely. I will go to bat for the las cannon. I was using it last edition, and I still like it this edition. It is very solid in that it offers something that, like, if you take 4 las cannons on a Contemptor, it's like, well, you could make the argument, why not just take a las cannon team that gets 10 of them? At least the Daradeo has a unique type of las cannon in that it is strength 10 with the exoshock rule and gives you a chance to crack a flare shield. I don't necessarily disagree. I think the Daradeo, without split fire, you and I talked about this, we absolutely agreed. It's just wonky and weird, and it just doesn't fit right now. I think it lost one of its key identity points with losing that split fire feature. That and the Contemptor is pretty heavy right now. It's pretty true. I don't disagree with that either.
Yerp. I'm trying to think if there were any other big standouts for me from my various missions.
I want to ask Lemmy one thing.
Yeah.
Lemmy, so you
I am no longer single. Sorry.
That's fine. I don't care. The question I need to ask, and by the way, I wish to congratulate you and Jake on your engagement.
Thank you.
I'd really like to know exactly your experience with the Galvorback, because I always poo-pooed them and thought they were kind of trash in previous edition, to be absolutely honest.
So, do you know what the new Word Bearer's Legion was with the Dark Favor?
You mean where you can sit there and start stacking and building up more bonuses to each guy? Yes.
Okay. So that is basically, in my opinion, what the Galvorback are designed around. Because off the top of your head, they are still very solid. Picking up Murderous Strike on your basic Galvorback is sexy, to say the least. My exact experience was... This was the game that I mentioned. I literally had to get across the board and get off of his table edge. So no matter what, I had to go. And he had Argyle Tall lead him. And Argyle Tall, if you didn't know, still has Eternal Warrior and is still bonkers in close combat. So I knew that I had to get my butt across the board and I was going to be dealing with him. So what I did was choomed the ever-loving crap out of that unit for 2 turns running with my bikes. Now, bear in mind, I was running a 9-man jet bike squad, which is very expensive, but I like the fact that it is a lot of Volkite on a highly mobile 16-inch moving platform, and I put a Tech Marine with him so that I could be BS5. So I lit that unit up with 45 Volkite shots over 2 different turns, fired a Leviathan Dreadnought into them, charged them with a Leviathan Dreadnought, fired a Contemptor Dreadnought, charged in with them, and lost both of them. I did not lose the Leviathan. I lost the Contemptor, and I charged in with another infantry squad to just try to chew them up and try to hold on to them. By the time I got done with it, Argyle Tall was the only thing left alive on that unit, and I still had a unit of infantry immortals that were locked in. He had killed my Contemptor. And my Leviathan I think it had 2 wounds left. But I threw everything into that unit, and they are just heckin' resilient. But I will say, my absolute way to tell people to deal with them is just the Volkite, which is kind of a sub-meta in my opinion right now. Volkite is insanely cheap. It's like 5 points for most things to upgrade to like a Volkite Culverin, which is 5 strength 6 depth of great shots. I mean, heckin' efficient. That's how I would tell you to deal with them, because they do not gain toughness with the dark favor points. They gain like strength, attack, and initiative, I think, are the 3 stats you get. So the more they wound their chosen unit, that unit's just going to get stacked, and you'll just become less and less capable of defeating them close combat. So hopefully that answered your question. But I personally feel like last edition Iron Warriors, basically every Iron Warriors player I knew, sans a certain Rite of War 2, was running stacked 10 deep Siege Tyrants. I pretty much feel like Galvorback are that for Word Bearers this edition. Run a big fat stack of those dudes with some character or Argyle Tall who's a beast by himself, strap him in there and just go, I want that unit to be my sacrificial unit. Pew, 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 stack these guys up and just murder fest your way through the table, because, like I said, they are like, their strength goes up, their attacks go up, their initiative goes up. You'll out-initiative practically anything. You are toughness 5 with 3 wounds and a 5-up feel no pain native, and all of your attacks are rending and murderous strike 5-up. Like, yikes on bikes. That unit is just going to tear through everything.
Okay, then.
Coming to my TED Talk, please stop by the gift shop on your way out. Pray to the dark gods for your dark favor talent.
Tip your waiter.
Yes, thank you. But yeah, I think almost every Word Bearer army is going to be locked into a 10-man squad, especially until Demons actually, because I think, Jacob, you mentioned you talked to him, and he's like, it feels like I'm playing 80% of an army, because so much of their theme is based around, hey, take these units from Demons. And what units? Because Demons don't exist yet. It's kind of like when the Marine book came out and said, see the rules for Thylax and Liber Mechanicum. I was like, that's nice. What's Liber Mechanicum?
Yeah.
And Jake, why did you say that the termite is such a terrible place to be right now?
Okay. So we have mentioned, maybe without specifics, that seemingly someone used reserves and badly hurt someone who wrote the rules for this. So,
Yes.
you have to, whenever you take a termite, a Charybdis now, those finally have Deep Strike, an Anvilus, Storm Eagle, and any of these things that are transports that must begin the game in reserves. So you do that, and then you have to roll and hope that it shows up on turn 2. And then once it shows up on turn 2, you get to sit inside your screaming metal death trap and think about what you've done. And then, maybe, unless you're the Charybdis, or I guess the Storm Eagle might have an assault ramp as well.
It's an assault vehicle.
But specifically, let's say in the case of the Anvilus and the Termite, you then get to disembark the next turn, because the Anvilus lost assault vehicle, and the drill never had it. So turn 2 you arrive, turn 3 you disembark, and turn 4, if you have been left alive, maybe you get to assault. Now, what you're going to run into, in my experience, is that by the time you deep strike the drill, and then you roll the scatter, and then you... And somehow, even if the opponent doesn't decide to just swarm over you and collapse you and kill all the dudes inside too, they're just going to run away from you. And then, when you disembark out of the transport, they're going to run away from you. And because you are probably heavy, you're probably never going to be able to catch them. So you're going to have to shoot them with bolters, which are, oh shucks, worse than tactical squad bolters, since now you always get Fury of the Legion on reactions. Yeah. So that's a big problem for me specifically and personally, that if I took a transport, and you mean to tell me that the contents may not be able to be useful in my game until turn 3 at the earliest, turn 4 at the most likely, and if my dice are particularly sour on a given day, they will automatically deep strike on turn 4. I will get to shoot them once on turn 5, assuming they don't deep strike into somewhere unfathomable. So however many points you paid for it, you got to shoot it once. It absorbed approximately no firepower. That to me is a great way to handicap yourself if you think a list is too strong.
I don't know what they were like. Yeah, you can't get out the turn you show up. Like, but why?
Oh, hold on.
It has doors.
As I talk about ways to adjust a list if you think it's too strong, I want to shout out, I believe it was Nathan. Nathan showed up playing World Eaters, and he brought a Mastodon, I believe, to every single game. And he won Best Sport because he played a Mastodon all 5 rounds.
I have told you the one way that you would lose sportsmanship with a Mastodon, and I'm not going to repeat it here because I don't want to let people think about that. But yes, I agree. The Mastodon is hysterical. I love it. I was like, how many immortals could I put in Mastodon at one point? I was like, yeah, never mind. Immortals are too expensive to put them in anything.
But now that we have kind of made that shout on behalf of Best Sport from the event, I think it's probably time for us to kind of wrap up and sign off. So I have been Jacob, and this episode I've been joined by
Duncan,
Jack,
John,
Amy.
And our special guest.
It's me, Lemmy.
We're glad you joined us, and remember, stay accountable to your hobby and to your buddies, and we'll see you next time.